This episode is sponsored by Magic Mind and Wix Studio.
When is the last time you listened to a podcast about web development, web design, and small business and didn't fall asleep? Yes, we cover web development, web design, and small business, but like actual human beings with personalities. If you're a beginner, we're not going to talk over your head. It's more like asking your buddy for help. We have guests, we have fun, and let me tell you, these two can get off on a tangent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HTML All the Things Podcast. This is Matt Lawrence and Mike Curran.
That's it, everybody. We are back, and this is the HTML All the Things Podcast. This episode is titled Navigating Difficult Situations as a Web Agency. So Mike and I have been trying to get a little more into the web agency content a little bit, because we noticed that we were more web developer centric, which we still are. But obviously, we want to talk about web dev agency stuff as well, because we run a web dev agency. And today we're going to be talking about some, straight up difficult situations that you end up in. A lot of them are social things. A lot of them are things that a client brings up to you that is sort of like an eyebrow raiser. Like, what do you mean? Almost kind of like an IT disaster episode or like IT horror story a little bit, some of them. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go and check us out on that Patreon, leave a review or rating on your podcast app. Join us in our Discord server or share this with your friends. Now, Mike, you actually put this episode together, so why don't you walk us through what we're about to discuss?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think like Matt and I have done a couple episodes in the past where we ask each other questions or he asks me questions and like just, honest reactions. And that's what I wanted with this one. And because of that, I actually went to ChatGPT and had it come up with a bunch of situations. I obviously kind of read through them, but I didn't really think far into them. Matt hasn't seen them before until right now. So I think this is going to be, again, off the cuff reactions on how we would react to these kinds of negative, bad situations. Or some of them aren't necessarily bad. They're just like situations that can come up, right? Like regardless of good or bad, sometimes as an agency, you just have to adapt and react to a situation that a client comes up with or you kind of force on the client, whatever. So there's going to be a few of them. I think out of all of these, one of them is actually something that we wrote. So we'll see if you can guess which one coming later. But the other thing I did want to mention is like, if people like this kind of style of episode, definitely let us know. I'm HTML Everything on X or Twitter. Matt runs our HTML Things account on Threads or Instagram, HTML The Things. Just let us know if you want that. And what I want to do is, instead of using ChatGPT for this, I would love to just ask the audience to come up with a list of stuff. And then Matt and I will go through each situation, how we would respond and how we would react to these kinds of things. But without any further ado, let's just get into the first situation. This one's titled The Budget Slash. So midway through a project, the client has some financial issues, right? Like maybe they lose a big project or a big thing and they come to you and they're like, hey, we have to cut your budget in half, but we still need this project done, right? That total situation that could happen. So Matt, how would you approach that? And how this episode will work a little bit is like, I'll ask a question and then I'll respond to Matt's kind of response. I won't go too far into it because Matt's going to do this situation, but then Matt will ask the next question and then I'll have that response.
Well, we actually had a similar situation happen to us. It wasn't really a budget slash, although it would have resulted in a budget slash. And what it was we quoted out a job. This is years ago now. And we quoted out a package deal. So it's basically like, hey, we're just going to build your whole site, make it live, everything, the whole thing in one package, one flat price. So I don't remember what the price was anymore. But then the client actually brought up the fact that, hey, I would like to save some money. And this was while the project had already begun. I'd like to save some money. And I would like to have my wife actually take a crack at making the site instead of you guys. Or like, I think it was more of a, hey, like, why don't you help her sort of make it? Or like when she has questions, you can help her through it. And basically how I handled it at the time was I said, well, since it's no longer a package deal, the actual price is going to revert to hourly. And hourly speaking, we were 25%, like I said, through the project. It was actually going to add up to more than what the entire package deal was. Now, this obviously, indicates how bad we were at pricing things out because that ratio doesn't add up. for like a good package deal or a fair package deal for everybody. We were new though; it was like a first year or two. That's how I like literally handled it in a situation that came up. Pretty specialized approach though, obviously, like it's a pretty specific thing. I think now I would just say, you know what, we're going to either have to change the scope of the project, we're either going to have to change the scope, we're going to have to change the timeline, because time is money. So Mike and I in the past, like, and I'm sure you'll comment on this too, Mike, is that we have actually gone, I wouldn't say out of our way, but we have definitely say, okay, let's say a project we quote and it's going to be 3 weeks. Part of the quote, part of the money in that equation is the fact that we're effectively reserving enough time in those 3 weeks to get whatever task done at the scope that exists. But if I'm able to take that project from 3 weeks and stretch it out to 12 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever, right? Longer than whatever was initially quoted, basically. If I'm able to just stretch that time out, maybe I'll give you a little bit of a discount. The thing is, though, I will say, is that Mike and I now are at a point where we don't really like to give discounts. A lot of the time people will take the discount and then just assume that you're still going to tell them, yo, I'm going to take longer. Hey, I'm going to do a lesser job. I'm not going to do as much of this. And then they'll just sort of like sneak in those demands. Be like, they'll call you up one day and be like, yo, man, like, why don't you just quickly do that kind of thing and try to like sneak it in. And so we don't really offer discounts like that anymore. But I think that those are sort of the ways I would handle it. I would basically not straight up. I would just not complete the project in the same time frame at the same scope. Absolutely not. If the budget's slashed, the work has to be slashed or the work has to be paused. Now, I do want to touch on that, is that if the work is paused until they do end up getting a budget, I may charge for what we've done so far, and we'll have to sort of negotiate that out. That'll be on a per project, per, you know, what we've done basis. Maybe where we've only completed, you know, a tiny bit of the code and it's more or less been the planning stage. So that type of stuff would be very much up to the project itself. But I would cease work in the manner in which it was being done, either literally stopping work, like I said, or adjusting it.
I like that approach. I think, again, it varies based on the client. It varies based on the actual project that we're doing and how much money, like, you know, if it's $100,000 project and it cuts budget in half to $50,000 and we were relying on a portion of that budget to fund a team that we were like, it changes based on the complexity, the budget, the time frame, everything, right? So you can't really come up with an answer that you can carry over to every single situation, period. Cannot happen. And for all of these that we're going to go through, all these situations, you have to make some assumptions. But yes, I think the mindset, like the steps that you went through is exactly kind of how I would handle it. You know, if you already have a good relationship with the client, like it happens, you know, like that people will lose projects and all of a sudden they're tight on budget. And sometimes you have to make compromises, both you and the client, and coming up with something where you're both able to complete the project, whether it be reduced scope, reduced time frame, or extended time frame, like, you know, allowing us to take on extra clients during, or, you know, just changing what you're making to an MVP and really releasing it in stages, right? Like changing the stages so that there's less in the first stage, more in the second stage, so that you can give the client a little bit more time to come up with the extra money. There's so many ways to handle this, but the point I think of this question is like, you don't just come back to a client and be like, oh no, like GG, you're done. Like, that's the wrong way of approaching that situation. I think you have to assume good intentions and work with them and try to come up with a solution. But, and now this is a big but, if the client were to come to you and demand this, and again, the relationship wasn't good, and now they're trying to shortchange you all of a sudden during a bad negotiation or something like that, you have to learn when to say no as well. So there has to be a line that you put in the sand of being like, I can't do this for you at this exact budget. If you're not willing to compromise, I'm not willing to compromise. And, you know, it's okay to have that kind of line in the sand. If it's all about the communication aspect and the compromise of both sides to be able to come up with a good solution. If one side can't compromise, then it's okay to walk away.
I will also say one other thing, and that is actually two things. So one thing I want to say is that I mentioned, you know, stretching the timeline of the project. And you mentioned, you know, it depends on what the project is and those type of things. We have actually offered people deals where we will say, hey, here's like a payment plan that we're willing to do. If you're able to make this payment plan, pay me the same amount. So let's say the project was quoted at 10 grand. we get midway through the project, they say, hey, I can only pay 7. It's like, okay, well, there's a $3,000 deficit there, but why don't we just say this? Why don't we change the payment schedule so that you're just paying me like $1,000 a month or $500 a month or whatever it is that you're comfortable with. And again, it depends on the client, depends on the project, and depends on your financial situation. And then just literally not pay me 7, pay me 10. But it stretches it out so that they're able to make money over time. And we've offered that to tons of people. We had a long form relationship with the client for a number of years. And it came time to refresh their site. And one of the big kind of, I guess, obstacles to them working with us was their entire company budgeted per department and per month. And they didn't budget these like sort of large things. And whenever there was a large thing, it was sort of like a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of nonsense to get it through. And so one of the ways that I tried to entice them, they didn't end up going with us, but one of the ways that I tried to entice them was I said, hey, why don't we just do this? Like the project's $10,000, just pay me the $10,000 over 10 months, like $1,000 a month, or pay me like over a year. Like, I don't care, because the project was going to take 6 months anyway. And I'm not desperate for that, extra bit of money within a 6-month difference of time. So like, why don't we do that? The second thing I wanted to say actually is you said like, you shouldn't just shut down a client. I wonder if there would be an appropriate situation to shut down a client if their budget's slashed, if you are running a very high speed, high volume agency. So you and I are very much effectively almost like freelancers. Like, yeah, there's an official business here, right? Like there's an official business set up and yada, yada, and all the whatever legal jargon there is in our jurisdiction. But effectively we're freelancing, right? We're freelancing around. Some of these other people, or some of these other agencies, I should say, are running, 100 sites, 400 sites, whatever. They may just offer kind of cookie cutter sites, right? This is $1,000. Like, which package do you want? Bronze, silver, gold. This is $1,000. This is $500. This is $2,000, whatever. And they move fast, and that's a part of it. And if someone comes to them and says, hey, I bought the $2,000 package, but I'd like to reduce to the $1,000, I wouldn't be surprised if the only appropriate action for them, financially speaking, is to stop working with the client. Now, I don't know if socially or morally, whatever. Again, it's probably it depends on the situation and the client and the project and all that as well. There's a lot of nuance there. But I wouldn't be surprised if bigger agencies that don't necessarily, quote unquote, care about individual clients, or literally can't because of timing, I wonder if they would just say, no, we're not doing that. So you're just going to have to come up with the money. We're pausing work as of now.
I think you're right. But I will say that I know those agencies exist, and I know some of them have some success. I just think that for a lot of people, that cookie cutter kind of thing just doesn't really make sense anymore because of the stuff like Wix and Squarespace and all that have that service for you that just, you just have to fill in some data. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of cookie cutter agencies. I'll be flatly honest with it. And I don't know how that business model continues to work without it causing a lot of backlash and a lot of bad reviews, right? Like, unless they're willing to bend a little bit. I'm not talking just about the budget thing. The budget thing might make sense regardless. But like, a lot of times these cookie cutter agencies have these policies in place and like they won't bend at all. And because of that, customers are just left feeling not as, serviced, because the nature of these websites is that it's really difficult to do a cookie cutter due to the fact that every customer has such different expectations. And yeah, I think it requires a little bit of an extra touch to leave a successful, a happy client. So yeah, I don't know. That's just my take on it. But you're probably right that when you're doing high volume, like, it's impossible to be able to approach and, fix every situation. So like, maybe with those larger agencies, just doesn't work.
Well, I was going to say, too, is something that's a little more mechanical that is in our industry is actually hosting. So if we think about hosting at the lower end, and when I say lower end, I mean lower performance servers at a lower price because they're for smaller projects. When we think about those are sold in cookie cutter packages, right? Bronze, silver, gold, starter package, whatever, right? Shared hosting, yada, yada, the list goes on. We've covered these in the show. But those packages are the packages, right? Very rarely are you going to be able to negotiate much off of those things. Now, when you start going up, though, start getting into VPS, getting into dedicated, maybe you host a lot of projects with a hosting company, you start forming a bit of a rapport with them, you start forming a relationship with them, and you can negotiate. And we've actually been in that situation as well, where during COVID, we were having a heck of a time getting a certain type of server. I'm not going to get into all the details, getting a certain type of server hosting up and running, and someone to help us migrate the stuff over. And basically, we eventually got in contact with the sales department, and the sales department was like, well, you want to use our service, you want to add this on, like blah, 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 whatever. They're like, why don't we just do a bundle deal for you where it's like 10% actually reduced price than the ticket price? And that was because we were with them for, I think it was like 6 or 7 years. We were now going to keep our old service and like have a new service that's also a higher tier as well, because it was for a specialized client at the time. And it forms that rapport, right? Whereas on the low end, meaning the price point, again, like, $2 hosting, $10 hosting a month, those type of things, the margin just isn't there. And so, like, that's where those cookie cutter things come in. And we discussed just, I think, last week in terms of for the recording. I'm not sure about the release order, but you and I had just discussed how web developers are largely solution engineers, right? Where you have a conversation with somebody, especially these days, and you're like, okay, let's do this part in no code. Let's, bring this part into like Shopify. Let's do a custom this. And there's a lot to be heard, like a lot to be said and a lot to be organized through. And I think ultimately what you'd effectively get at with that is like, you have to really watch like your bottom line effectively, right? You can't just sort of be like, oh, okay, like, I'll negotiate every single like little deal, or I'll negotiate every single little thing. Like sometimes things are just not going to work out in that way, right? Like, for example, like we're solutions engineers. So we go to somebody and we say, okay, we're going to do a no-code platform. So we're going to do two no-code platforms. And I'm just making this up. Let's say it's $50 a month for Shopify and it's $50 a month for Webflow. We're going to combine the two and boom, there's your project, right? And then the person comes to us and goes, my monthly budget, while we've already started building in these platforms, our monthly budget's now $75. So like now what do you do, right? So there's a really stark contrast between those that are doing cookie cutter, right? Where like the cookie cutter guys, they got to run fast. They're looking after their bottom line. The guys who are doing the solutions engineering, they have more wiggle room, but they're both the cookie cutter guys and the solutions engineers, to sort of kind of clarify my thoughts here. They're both looking after their bottom line. Usually the guys who are the solutions engineers, they will have a bigger buffer, right? Where they will, let's say they're charging $150 a month, even though it's only $100 a month. So if the client comes to them and says, I can only pay $125, they have that negotiation room, right? But if they dip below and, we end up paying for the Shopify and the Webflow together and we're paying we're losing $25 a month, now we're in the same boat effectively as the cookie cutter guys, right? Where we're looking after our bottom line. I just think that the cookie cutter agencies, A, it's a tough game, like you said, and B, what it ultimately is they're already at the edge of their profiteering. So they seem cutthroat, but they have to be cutthroat. I just think that might be where they kind of get that bad reputation or bad reviews. Like, I get it. I get, like, from a client perspective, it's like, yo, what the heck, man? But, like, they don't have the room. Like, they're not going to pay even $1 a month for you. They have to make that money, right? They have to make something. And I think that's the difference there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think there is that kind of wiggle room there that it's tough for both sides, and you can understand it and you can also kind of push back against it. That's why I think, again, you have to approach every situation differently. You can't have a cookie cutter solution for everything. Even if you have a cookie cutter agency, I think they still have a little bit of wiggle room, a lot of good ones. So yeah, that's kind of where I go with that. I think, Matt, it's your turn to ask me the next question.
All right. So we're going to do the perfect storm. So multiple projects hitting critical phases at the same time, leading to team burnout and chaos. So the question here is this a problem of time management? Is this a problem of prioritization? Is this okay, we're in a crunch time, this few weeks, this week, whatever, it's just going to suck, but we have to do it? Or, I've actually heard this quite a bit in forums and stuff, is this all actually a problem of mismanagement? So is a perfect storm, short of, let's say, external forces, completely causing absolute disasters, because life is crazy sometimes. But if everyone's been working in a normal pace, and then all of a sudden, every 3 or 4 months, we have a perfect storm, is that actually a mismanagement issue? So why don't we discuss that? So time management, prioritization, and mismanagement.
Great. Yeah. So this one's interesting, and I think a bunch of projects hitting the same phase can happen very easily. So I'll give an example. You can be a good manager and have it all spaced out, and then one project gets delayed a week later, 2 weeks later, and all of a sudden that spacing means nothing, and all of a sudden you have two projects going into phase one of their deployment cycle at the same time, and you have chaos. So this is a very, very, very common situation. The best way to handle it is, I mean, if you have enough people and this doesn't become an issue, like if you have a float, especially like sometimes an agency will have a floating developer that goes to the most important project that's currently there. A lot of times you can just use that floating developer and put the person in the spot that needs to be able to push whatever project has been delayed, and then no one has to overwork. That's kind of maybe the ideal situation where you have that float, you already have them, you're paying them money. Now they're, put into the place where they can alleviate some of the pressure. Everything works out great. If that float is already kind of taken into account with this and they're already working crazily and you don't have any choice, a lot of times what you'll have to do is figure out which project is the most critical, is in the most critical phase. Maybe there's one of the two projects that hitting critical phases can be delayed a week, right? Then that is on the owner of the agency, that's on the manager, that's on the project manager, whatever, to go to each project. And you don't have to particularly say hey, we have to delay you. You just have to talk to them about what's the next step, right? What's the next step after we launch this? Is it 2 weeks of extra testing? Are you okay with 1 week of testing? Have that conversation with them. If it comes to it, sometimes you'll have to have that hard conversation and decide on yourself on which project is going to be delayed. I think it's more important to get to that point rather than be okay, everyone's working 24 hours a day, because the problem with putting extra crunch, the assumption here is that people are already crunching, right? You're already in the critical phases of project. Even if it's just one project in a critical phase, most of the time some developers will be in crunch time. So meaning working a little bit more, checking their emails a little bit more often, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The point, what you want to avoid is adding, first of all, extra crunch, and second of all, having a consistent crunch. Imagine one team was just in crunch for 2 weeks, and now you're trying to move them over to this other project that's already in crunch. This is the issue with the gaming industry a lot of times, where they go from one crunch to another crunch to another crunch, and then they get burnt out, right? So you need to spread that out. I think a really good cycle is you need to have it so that, there's a little bit of urgency for a couple weeks, and then you have to have it so that they're just building for another couple weeks after that, where there is no serious pressure. They just need to complete the tickets, get the project going to a certain degree, start something up fresh, and have them, working their regular hours, maybe even take some days off during those regular times to reset for the next potential crunch period. There needs to be this ebb and flow. For myself included, that's how I work best, is when I have a little bit of a crunch, then I have some, more relaxing building time, refactoring time, and then, a couple months later, I go into another crunch. I like having ups and downs personally. So that's kind of how I run my team as well. And I'm very upfront with that when I talk to them and I'm hiring. I'm like, this is how it's going to be. And if they don't like it, obviously, the other companies run a more consistent storm where it's either crunch all the time or more relaxed all the time. I guess that's up to everyone else. But regardless, my point being is that you need to have it so that you're not overworking every single person on your team for extended periods of time. You need to spread that work out, and that might require tough conversations with clients about pushing them down a couple weeks. And it's okay to have those conversations. Is another really, really important point. You need to be okay with setting different expectations and talking about how situations arise. Sometimes clients are perfectly okay with that. In fact, I would say most of the times, as long as you're upfront with them and tell them as soon as you possibly can, right? Not a day before their deadline is hit, but a couple weeks before or 3 weeks before, arrangements can be made, right? If you're upfront and communicative. Sometimes, of course, you can have some negative blowback, negative feedback. Sometimes you might have to work out maybe some sort of different, payment restructuring deal, something like that. But the last thing you should be doing is making it so that this mistake or whatever happened is your employee's fault. And now you're putting it on them to work 24 hours a day to make up the mistakes of either the client, yourself, the project manager, whatever. That's the last thing you should be doing.
I have a question for you rather than an answer for this thing. And it comes to crunch. So crunch, there's been a big anti-crunch, almost protest, if you will, against the gaming industry. It's been very public since maybe 2019, 2018, something like that, just roughly, out of memory. And what the crunch in the video game industry seemed to be was, it was to varying degrees, but a lot of it was like very serious, like 6-7 days a week, 16-hour days consistently, really chaotic, really crazy. And then it's the gaming industry, so there's a high chance that once you complete this huge thing, you're just going to get laid off anyway, right? It's a big problem in the gaming industry, and I'm summarizing it in a sentence, so I understand that it goes deeper than that. And my question is to you is like, you like varying levels of intensity, and you mentioned, sometimes you have to crunch a bit. What is your sort of level of like high intensity? So my question with that is like, to me, I don't mind if work gets, a little bit crazier, a little bit like whatever, as long as it's more like, hey, when I'm at my desk for, let's say 8 hours, like let's say we do a 9 to 5. If I'm at my desk for 8 hours, it's a high intensity 8 hours versus sometimes it's not a high intensity 8 hours, right? There's a varying intensity within the 8 hours, and I should be able to complete everything. Or are you like, hey, everybody better work 16 hours a week or 16 hours a day this week, but then we're going to go back down and it'll be chill. Like, what's the degree? Because there's a big, big scale there.
Very good question. Very good question. So I never put the pressure on to work more than 8 hours. And the other thing is, like, I don't also track hours in any way, shape, or form. What I mostly am looking for is, like, if a bunch of issues arise on this day and you need to stay a little bit later on this day, I think it should be okay to do that with the mindset of, like, maybe the next day even you wake up a couple hours later and you start work a couple hours later to compensate for that, right? Like, I think the balanced crunch where you kind of, some days are just crazy where like all the QA is happening at the same time. There's issues that arise. And some days, you work extra hours just because you want to get stuff done. The problem happens is if that's every day for like a significant amount of time and you can't compensate for that, I don't think it's a problem if it happens every once in a while. And if there's a 2-week period, I'm not saying every day in those 2 weeks you're going to work extra. It's going to be like you said, those 8 hours that you work at your desk are going to be pretty intense during those 2 weeks. And some of those days you might have to extend and work a couple extra hours, but then hopefully the next day, literally, you can just sleep in a little bit more and compensate for that. I wouldn't want someone just working for free is what I'm trying to say. But I would also be hesitant if I were like the employee and being like, okay, I'm only working this 8 hours. I'm turning off my phone at 5 during like intense periods. And that's it. You know what I mean? That's where I kind of draw that like up and down ebb and flow line. During like low times, 8 to 5, no big deal. Shut off your phone. There's nothing, serious that's happening anyway. It's just during these like deployment periods, like a week or two before deployment is when a lot of this kind of like quote unquote crunch happens, depending on how you manage it.
Like during the crunch time, it's sort of like you don't track hours. You're more or less tracking tasks. Like if someone is given a task and it takes them, let's say during the crunch time, 8 intense hours, or let's say 9 hours one day, right? A little bit of that. Are you expecting them to like keep their availability after the 9 hours as well? Like I missed that. When you like, do you want them to have phone on boys for 2 weeks? Like you're all on call, or like what's the situation there?
Definitely not on call, but a little bit more responsive, I would say. Even during like, some of the evenings or something like that, if something comes up, I would want not maybe their phone to be completely like beside them, but maybe every once in a while to just check in and make sure that there's no one pinging you, right?
Okay.
Just for that short amount of time, so that to make sure that the rollout for the deployment goes smoothly, and then it gets back down to normal. Again, it's tough. Like if you're on vacation, turn off your phone, 100%. If you're on the relaxing time when it's not crazy crunch time, turn off your phone after 5. It's just during those two weeks out of like the 3 months that you have that I would need a little bit more response time, because a lot of times, and I should also very much clarify here, I work in an async company where we're all in different time zones. That's the complication that I think is missed a little bit, is where for me, I have people in Australia, I have people in the West Coast, East Coast of the United States, I have people in England, I have people in China, like all over the world. So our time zones don't overlap very well. And 90% of the time, that's not an issue. So we can work asynchronously, no problem. It's okay to have a 24-hour communication time, not a big deal. It's just because of the implications of a 2-week launch period, communication has to be a little bit more reactive, that this becomes an issue. So that's why in that time frame, it's better to have a more communicative team and then go back to more asynchronous after.
Right, and that definitely plays a role in is the async, right? Because you're going to have some people that are going to be sleeping when someone else needs an answer. So like, if someone has a morning routine where they don't normally check their phone, then that's a further delay when it's like a desperate time. Whereas like, hey, maybe you should check right when you wake up, kind of thing, or close to when you wake up, to at least get the messages through, or be like, yeah, I'm on that, or like whatever, to sort of get through it. Okay, so it's different because I'm looking here actually at an article because I remember the story about Telltale Games, right? Where the people that made, you know, I think it's Wolf Among Us, but the Walking Dead games, those type of things, and a bunch of high profile IP actually, I think Batman and stuff. And they went through like a major like restructuring. I think there may have even been a bankruptcy in there. And, you know, it was a culture of crunch, I remember reading. It was a major culture of crunch. And I have a summary here from a VG247.com article here. And I just got Copilot to summarize it while we were sitting here. And it says here that the work culture at this place, at Telltale Games, so this piece reveals that a work culture of high pressure and crunch with a focus on meeting ambitious launch schedules for multiple high-profile IPs. And I remember another article, and this is again from memory, so it might be a little bit wrong. They found out that, hey, people are really productive and a lot of work gets done during crunch. So why don't we just crunch all the time and then we're always really productive? So then you just like you broke everything. Like you broke every rule of like, I don't know, HR. I don't know really what you'd say, but you know what I mean? Like broke every rule of management. And this is where it would touch on, because I mentioned mismanagement. This is mismanagement, right? Whereas if you're like, yeah, like let's just ride everyone to the point where they're at 16 hours a day, we're not sleeping, but hey, look, we're all humans and that's what we're achieving. We're all hardcore. It's like for some, like, I like my video games, but like for some video games, like, come on, let's relax a little bit here. Like, what are we doing? And actually, like, just to mention something that happened to us recently, Mike, I got slapped with a crunch time. Like, quite literally, I started about 4 projects this year, 4 projects this year. And a lot of them, a big, very popular thing for clients to do is to drop off the map for about 4 to 5 weeks randomly and then come back and be like, yo, like, let's just get this done on like Friday at like 6 p.m. And you're like, what is going on? So I had about 4 projects, quite literally all the same week, all like bug me. And one person like called me at like noon on a Friday and was like, let's just make this live, but none of it's ready. And I'm like, well, like, that's not up to me. It's your content and big mess, right? So I literally said, all right, that's it. And I created a queue. I was like, everyone's getting in this queue. And this is where like, hopefully I would consider it. I mean, it was just for me, but my not mismanagement. I said, you're in 2 weeks because we got other stuff to do. You are in a week. These 3 days are for this person. And I'm taking that other day off. And like, that's it. Like that, like everyone get in a queue, everyone get in line. And that's the way we're dealing with it. Because if I'm panicking and, you know, freaking out on one project while I'm trying to do 4 at once, all of them are going to be a disaster. Instead, let's just have all 4 of these projects work out well. So that's it. Too bad. You waited 4 weeks. You didn't talk to me. You're now down to 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks from when you last contacted me that this thing's being done. Too bad. You know, it's unfortunate. Tell your manager. I don't care. All right, next person. You know, like you just have to be harsh like that. Don't like tell people off, but you just have to say, hey, I'm busy doing this. I'm doing this. This has to go to the back of the line. Sorry. And that's how I manage that type of thing. And if obviously like that same policy that I just discussed, I would apply that if, let's say, there were people under me where like other people are working and I'm sort of the face of the team, the face of the company, whatever, talking to the clients, and I don't want my team to get absolutely destroyed. I'm just like, oh yeah, let's just destroy my team. It's like, no, that's it. You guys still getting in line. Like this is out of control here. You got to get in line. And I mean, fun fact is I actually learned that in IT. I remember I have a very distinct memory of one morning, some manager just said, oh, Matt and like a couple other people will deal with this random problem. We're like, what? And it was on the BlackBerry device itself. And what ended up happening was everyone came to my desk like, hey, just do this for me, do this for me. And it's like, well, hang on, hold it. Like, what's going on? I have other tasks to do. And I literally said, okay, that's it. We're forming a line. And quite literally, there was a line and around the cubicles of my desk. I was like, because I can't help you all. Everyone has to get in the line. And it worked. We ended up getting everything done. Everything was cool. Manager was happy. People were happy. No one got hurt. No one got poked in the eye. So that's it. Like, it just worked out. And so that's where I learned that. And I just wanted to mention that because if you right now are listening and you're in IT and you're like, there's like 18 things happening, you can't do 18 things at once. So you got to get things in line somehow. And I know that it's easier said than done, but like, what are you going to do? Because you literally can't. You can only do what you can do. And that's how you deal with the perfect storm.
That was a very good, succinct way to deal with it, especially when it's not like when it's on them, when they ghost you for 6 weeks. You have to put your foot down and communicate, and you don't have to be rude. You just have to explain the situation, right? And I think that's what you did, Matt, and it works every time.
Because it's like, hey, I'm not going to wait and then not do other jobs while you're busy. You're too busy to answer me. It's like, I also have to make money. Like, what if you ghosted me? Now I just don't make money for 12 weeks because I have to start another 6-week project. Like, this is, makes no sense. So just being like reasonable, cordial, but like assertive I think that's the way to say it. Not yelling and screaming, but assertive. Like, that's it. Back to the line. Basically, in a more cordial way than that, of course. And just via email. Luckily for me, I never got a phone call, so that was nice. But, Mike, I would like to talk about a time in which I did not receive phone calls at all this week, because I was away this weekend at an elusive and remote cabin. And that's actually true. It's not elusive, but it was a remote cabin. And I was having a great time out there, having a big party with my buddies for a wedding and also a birthday. And it was a big old wedding. I'm just going to call it a big old wedding event. And it's a big event. Everyone's hanging out. Everyone's having a great time. And it's like, I'm not going to stick to my cut down on caffeine routine. Like, of course I'm not. So, I wake up in the morning, I only have, it's me, so I only have a couple of hours of sleep, because what I do at these group events is I stay up with the people that stay up late. And I get up with the people that get up early, because I don't want to miss anything. So I'm crazy. So I'm drinking coffee in the morning, drinking 2 or 3 coffees. That's what I'm doing, whatever, right? Every morning at this cottage, drinking coffee. And, I'm good at about 2 or 3 coffees. Like, I'm not too jittery, I'm not too anxious or anything, especially if I, quote unquote, need it, because I'm actually, tired. Something comes around that happens to all of us, which is the, of course, afternoon crash. But when haven't been sleeping right and you've been drinking coffee to sustain it, you're like, oh, this afternoon crash is going to be real bad. So the only way to solve it, or so I think, is like, I better have some more coffee. But thankfully, I brought my Magic Mind. I have a mental performance shot in my backpack, and I reach for that in the afternoon, just after the noon, like maybe around 1 p.m. And I was like, I don't want to be more jittery. I don't want to be jittery and anxious and everything for the afternoon here. I want to still have a good time. Drank the Magic Mind, and boom, I had no crash. I was alert. I wasn't as stressed and jittery as I would have been if I had yet another coffee. You got to cut it off at 3. It started to get a little ridiculous. So I just had a great afternoon. Was alert, not tired, not yawning, was able to stay up late like a fool potentially, but stay up late again, sleep only a couple hours again, and rinse, repeat. Now, here's the weird thing is, I thought, hey, it's Magic Mind. I'm going to have this routine where I have my coffee in the morning, like I've said in the past, and then have a Magic Mind as well. And lately, I've actually done the afternoon thing. So I did it at the cottage, and I'm doing it now when I'm back at home. I'm having a coffee or 2 in the morning, and instead of me having like another coffee to stave off that afternoon crash, I'm actually just saying, the heck with this. I'm popping a Magic Mind, and I don't have any more coffee for the rest of the day. It helps me stay alert, and I've actually had it later at night. And I don't know if this is just like a me thing, because it might be, like, everyone's chemistry is different, but it helps me stay alert without affecting my sleep. So I'm alert, but if I need to lay down, it's like, okay, it's time to go to bed. I can fall asleep. I'm not like forced awake or artificially or something. I don't know if that's a thing just with me or whatever, but it's been working great for me. So I'm on the Magic Mind afternoon trend, I guess. And I've been doing that daily for quite a few days now in the afternoon rather than the morning. And it's been a great time. Now, if this sounds interesting to you, because it probably does, we have a limited time offer that you can use now. Again, in limited time, and it gets you up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off one-time purchases with code HTMLPOD20. There's no spaces, no dashes, no hyphens, no nonsense. HTMLPOD20 at checkout. And you can claim that using our link, which is magicmind.com/HTMLPOD20. Those details will, of course, be in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. And I've actually been throwing them in the show description as well for those of you that have apps that allow you, podcast apps that allow you to just click on the link there.
That's awesome. I think it's time to move on to the next situation here. I mean, maybe Magic Mind could have solved this situation, but who knows? With this, I'm going to ask you this one. The social media storm. So a negative review or social media backlash hits the agency. Someone hates us. how would you approach this? Like, what's our crisis management policy, and how would we even care about rebuilding the agency's reputation?
So we've had nothing as serious as having to rebuild our reputation, but we have actually have had to deal with negative reviews when we were making Chromebook apps and Chrome extensions. And I remember I made an app called Multiple Accounts for Outlook.com. And what I basically just did was it was a little, because Chrome apps used to work on Windows when in Chrome. And I basically just had it so I could sign into multiple Outlook.com accounts and it would just work. And we had a few people complain. And one person that I distinctly remember basically was like, well, I guess it doesn't work for like Outlook Enterprise and blah, 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 because Microsoft 365 and the enterprise kind of game wasn't fully sort of sorted out. And he's right. Like, it's not what I was using it for. I was using it for personal, free, usually, Outlook.com accounts. And so you get that negative review. And so I just literally just reply, because it's all public. The review is public. And I'm going to send this thing publicly. And I say, hey, sorry, but it clearly states that this is only for Outlook.com. You know, I can't remember if I said maybe we'll update in the future or something like that. But the point is that what I try to do is I just try to be truthful and say, okay, you know, this is the situation, you know, sorry, this didn't work out for you. And that's, you know, basically it. I don't want to get into the sort of review game where I'm going in and really managing every negative opinion. Like, some people will get super defensive. They'll get super, like, they'll kind of, if they get attacked, they'll attack as well. And I'm not saying to not be assertive. If you look at some of my like responses on social media, I'll just be like, you know, I'll just say like, you know, thanks, bud, or something like that, you know, a little assertively if someone's trying to be cheeky with me type of thing. Not like, you know, swearing at them, not telling them off, but you're just sort of being assertive, like, yeah, okay, yeah, like, stop being sarcastic with me, stop bugging me kind of thing. That's the sort of, I guess, personal policy that I take with this type of thing. Now, the thing is, though, is I understand that there are people that are really into Google reviews for good reason, because Google reviews, if that's how you drum up your leads, if you know, on your Google My Business card, effectively, if that's how you drum up your leads, those Google reviews are very important. And so you have to sort of get into that review game. I will say, though, that, you know, at that point, like, just doing good, consistent work and answering people's negative reviews with, you know, proper vernacular, like how you would actually try to resolve it. You have to go into it, or at least I go into it with an idea of like, I want to resolve this, or I want to explain what was going on, right? And in the odd time in which it's someone that's just attacking for the sake of attacking, maybe they didn't even use us as a service, they just decided to give us 1 star, 0 stars, whatever the lowest is, then okay, then I'll get into that little bit of that game where it's like, okay, I have to report this, or I have to try to get this review removed because it's just a legitimately not a review. And so basically what I'm saying is I want my reviews to be legitimate and honest, and some people are not going to like your service. That's why there's competitors, and that's why there's multiple services out there. Mike and I, just last week, again, as of recording anyway, I don't know about release, Mike and I just last week were talking about how Mike is a more broad strokes person, and I'm a more detail-oriented person. People might hate talking to me, because I get into the details. But some people love it. Like, some people will say, man, this is great, this is so detailed, like, I love this, like, I've heard that said. But other people will cut me off and be like, come on, like, let's, you know, get going. But it makes sense. Like, some clients are going to work better with me. Some people are going to work better with Mike. Some people are going to work better with someone else, like a totally different person. And that's fine. But the whole point is like, we're solutions engineers effectively. We want to make sure that the solutions work out. And of course, you want to be a little bit flexible with people, of course, where you get to the point, right, where you say, okay, you know, these people, I've been working with them for a while. They've been putting up with my detail-oriented messages or emails or whatever, and they're not very impressed with them, or I'm getting the impression that they're not. Maybe I'll draw it back a little bit, do a little less detail in there, and we'll just see what they say. And if they say, yo, man, like, we really liked your detailed thing, cool, I'll bring it back. I guess what I'm ultimately just trying to say is that you're just trying to be, like, honest. You just want to have the customer have a good experience, but not every customer is going to have a good experience.
I don't think I could have said it better in any way, shape, or form, so you nailed it from all perspectives there. That was perfect.
Well, thank you.
There's no applause. Yeah, there's no applause. I mean, if you're applauding out there, if you want to send us a clip of you applauding, again, HTML everything on Twitter, HTML things on Instagram. We'll get your applause clips.
I'm expecting a whole bunch of DMs on Instagram now of like the Shia LaBeouf gif of him just clapping. So this next one here is actually not generated by ChatGPT. This is actually a Mike original, and I actually made this italics in our show notes so that we knew this. Maybe it'll even be italics in the actual show notes on the website. And that is the ChatGPT Guru. So this sort of disastrous situation or difficult situation is when a customer constantly sends messages with ChatGPT responses that counter things you've said, try to make it seem like you're wrong. They want to seem like the expert in the situation. Let's be serious. You say, hey, this is how this works. They go, well, ChatGPT didn't say that. Or you say, well, that company's not open, until 9 a.m. tomorrow, so I'll open up the ticket then. And they say, well, actually, it says here that they're open till 6. ChatGPT says they're open till 6. So you can do it right now. When you just know, because you've worked with them forever, and you're the professional, let's be serious, in this situation, you know that's incorrect. So Mike, this is a new one too. This is a Mike original, but it's also brand new. ChatGPT Guru, how do you deal with them?
Yeah, I think you're going to have the better answer here because you're technically the one dealing with this right now in real life. But for me, again, I go back to this feel of like, to have a successful project, both sides need to respect how we get to the solution, right? This kind of response from a client signifies that they don't trust you. That's just the reality, right? Like they don't trust you as a professional, and whether that's correct or not correct doesn't matter. That's what they're doing by sending you a response from ChatGPT, who they trust apparently more than you because you've already answered the question for them. So for me, this is kind of one of those steps into disrespect area. And I don't want to say regardless of what the message is, because sometimes ChatGPT can have interesting insights, but a lot of times ChatGPT will be wrong. It'll hallucinate depending on the question you'll have. It'll just give you flat out incorrect information. The client might not be asking the right question and getting a weird response. They might be guiding ChatGPT to a response that fits their, motive more. Like there's just a million ways you can kind of go through ChatGPT and get to a bad or wrong answer that fits maybe the client's narrative or something like that, that it just doesn't bode well for the relationship that's happening. So I think what you have to do in this situation, and what I would do, is I would probably state my concern with these kinds of responses. And I would say, it doesn't sound like you respect me enough. It doesn't sound like you respect my technical abilities enough. Is there anything wrong? Like, should I do something differently? Like, I would very clearly state to the customer that I do not approve of messages like this, especially, again, if they're trying to push their own narrative. Now, again, sometimes this comes with a grain of salt. Sometimes it could just be an innocent thing that the customer is just doing for fun or something like that. Like you have to read the situation, right? Like if they're just sending you some interesting stuff from ChatGPT that is, not something they've even asked you about, maybe something outside of all the questions they've asked you, just something they found interesting, that's a totally different situation. This is more them countering what you're saying using ChatGPT, and most of the time being wrong about it. So yeah, I would be pretty upfront with that. This shows disrespect to you, that this isn't how we should communicate going forward. And if they're having issues, don't do this weird way of going around my head by asking an AI robot, tell me flat out, maybe we can work them out. If we don't work them out, maybe we can part ways on amicable terms, and I can help you transition to a more appropriate technical professional if that
You're
works
right
for you.
On the attack angle. Like, unless it's, like you said, the client is socially using ChatGPT, where it's like, hey, I asked ChatGPT a bunch of questions about what I should cover. This is the list of stuff it gave me. Like, do you think we should go into that area? That's different, right? Like, that's it. Like, that's the client using a tool to ask a question. But when it's effectively an attack vector, really, where you say, this is how you turn on your cell phone. And they say, well, ChatGPT says that you turn on your cell phone doing this other method. It's like, okay. Once or twice, it's sort of like, okay, it's like a bit of an attack vector. I find it a little rude, but like whatever. But when it gets to be more serious, more consistent, more like, no, you're wrong. Or like my favorite one is like, I'm dealing with this currently where I prove ChatGPT wrong. And then the response that I get is still from ChatGPT, where it's like, oh, I just plugged into ChatGPT that I was wrong. And then they gave me another thing that you need to do. And like, that's how my task list is created, by me just following a bot. And it's sort of like, you're making ChatGPT my manager, almost in a way. Why are we doing it like this? This is, bizarre. And I've seen ChatGPT messages sent to support where, hey, ChatGPT says you should do this to fix it. And it's sort of like, I've gotten to the point where I have quite a bit of patience actually with people. I get pretty pissed off, if I'm just going to be honest. But like, I have a lot of patience when making face.
I feel like you have a lot more patience than I do. I feel like you take stuff pretty personally, but you are very patient. We are extremely patient.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's like, I'm angry in my head, but like, I'll still help you and like, won't take it personally to like ruin our relationship or something. And like, there was a couple points in the last couple weeks where I was just told like, oh, this is like easy. Like, look, like clearly like ChatGPT has laid out that X topic is easy. And I'm like, cool. And I'm on webcam in a meeting. I'm like, cool. I stop working. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's easy. Go ahead and do it. Ask to ChatGPT how to do it. Super awkward bit of silence. Then the meeting continues. Well, I'm not saying it's easy. Oh, you're not saying it's easy now. So you don't know what you're doing then. Okay. So you need me still, kind of like reasserting, like, this is getting ridiculous, right? And like, that was probably the most aggressive I've ever gone in a business meeting where I was just like, I can't handle this anymore. I am TR done with this. And I've explained that a few times. TR done is we did a real brief and we did a final project for college. And I've reached a point in which I literally and physically couldn't handle it anymore. I just broke because of the stress. Full-blown panic attack in Mike's basement at the time. Full-blown panic attack. And then I just woke up the next morning and I was like, I decided I don't care about this anymore. Like, I've done my dues. I've tried. And that's it. I just don't care. And I gave up 10% of my grade because it was like, dress up in a nice clothes. I was like, nah, I'm dressing comfy today. I don't care. I just showed up. And even you, Mike, you're like, you could have just brought a shirt, like a collared shirt, and then you could have just changed it later. I'm like, no, don't care. TR, do not care. I'm at that level. Don't give a crap. And so like, a ChatGPT guru has made me at that level where unfortunately I'm just sort of like, don't care. Ask the bot. Ask the AI what to do. Why are you talking to me?
Devs, this one's for you. I've got 30 seconds to tell you about Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprises. So here are a few things you can do in 30 seconds or less on Studio. Integrate, extend, and write custom scripts in a VS Code-based IDE. Leverage zero setup dev, test, and production environments. Ship faster with an AI code assistant. And work with Wix headless APIs on any tech stack. Time's up, but the list just keeps going. Step into Wix Studio and see for yourself. A link will be in the show description as well as in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com.
And here's the thing, ChatGPT on a couple of the things that we went through has some great suggestions actually, and fair enough. And we even had a Zoom call at one point where we were using ChatGPT cooperatively together. That's fine. And it gave me a couple good ideas and I tried them out and I had to modify them because the bot was still wrong, but it was still a good idea. Try the idea with a modification. It ended up working. Great. That's fantastic. We used a tool. We used it together. Everything's respectful. Everything's good. This, though, when it's used on an attack vector, of which it is, or it has been to me, not good. Not happy about that. So that's ChatGPT guru is, I think Mike is correct in you have to kind of like attack it head on where you just go like, hey, like what's going on here? Because you don't want to become as done. You don't want to become TR done.
You don't want to burn out. Like, you can easily burn out with people disrespecting you on a consistent basis.
Easily. Oh, 100%. And it burned me out. Like, it went through my patience. And, like, that's pretty difficult to do, honestly.
Yep, that's for sure. I can attest to that. It would be very difficult to get Matt to that state. And, yeah, the ChatGPT guru got you there. So that's why we have it in this episode. It's good. Hopefully we won't have to be dealing with that for very long because we will be instituting some of the advice that we have here and we'll move forward without the ChatGPT guru.
This is a Matt and Mike original crisis. Original difficult
situation. Okay, next one here. This one's for you, Matt. The design diva. A client with strong opinions on design, insisting on a style that clashes with modern trends. Actually, this is probably another one that's something that hits home. Talk about balancing the client preferences with professional advice.
Not good.
Just like yeah,
not good at all. I have this memory. It might even be like my last memory I ever have on this earth, where We took a 5-page business website, homepage, about us page, a specific page to them, contact page, and like a map page or something like that, whatever. Basic, has some sliders, has some images, whatever, a gallery page, whatever. We removed all but 6 words throughout the entire website. 6 words. And I described to this person that we have to have words, even back then, because Google needs to effectively read the page and understand what you're doing. And not only that, the site was already done. Like, we completed the site, and I had put all the text in there that was sort of standard text based on, I think it was like a pamphlet or something about this person's company that they had handed me. And we got it down to literally 6 words because this person was trying to copy, not in like one-to-one, but they were trying to copy in design language one of the people they work with. It was like a supplier of theirs or something like that. But the site was really bizarre. It was like really kind of buggy, and it was like, it had this weird, almost like a timeline thing where you would like click through an image and you were kind of like zigzagging through. Very, very bizarre, and it felt really amateurish. What ended up happening was it turned out that website was actually an interim website, and they were building a new one. And then the new one came out after we had removed all the words, because there were no words on that other website, or there were very few. And then the guy's like, well, like, maybe we should change direction. And it's like, we have to rebuild everything because this other person has changed. Like, this is lunacy. So then I just basically tell them, no problem, but you're paying again. Like, it's another site. We have a site now that has 5 pages and 6 words. That's what we have now. Like, we have to rebuild, and they didn't want to pay. So that was it. What's hilarious, actually, is that I was actually contacted later. And when I say later, I mean like years later, asking how to log into the site to change it. This was an HTML and CSS website. I don't even think there was JavaScript in there. I think there might have been because I installed a slider, but I didn't write it. And it was like, this is an old website. Like, this is an old website that was good for the time, and it was responsive. This was when Flexbox was like a question. Like, people were like, should we use Flexbox? Like, that's how old this website was. And so we were at, and it's like, do we have an editor? I was like, you don't have an editor. Like, I was like, I can make changes. I mean, I guess they got use out of it for years, but they ended up replacing the site I built with something that was cookie cutter. It was some sort of template, and that was that. But man, also, Mike, I would like to point out, we ordered some brand identity stuff for this person. This person took off their glasses, grabbed the business card. I was there. I was sitting there in shock. They took their glasses off. They took the business card. They put it up to their eye. And I don't mean into the range in which, like, our eyes will naturally focus at a certain point. I'm no optometrist, but I have eyeballs. I'm looking through them right now. And like, if I put my hand right up to my eyeball, it goes out of focus right now. And if I move it away, like, I don't know, I'm just going to say 6 inches. I don't know if that's true, but like away a little bit, it focuses. This person took it right up to their eye socket and was like, this printing is just not at the degree of which, like, which it should be. Like, you could see the pixels. And I was like, what do you mean you can see the pixels? And so he shows me, and I go and look, and I'm like, that's the fabric of the paper. Like, the paper's been made from something. Paper pulp, I don't know, whatever. I'm not a paper guy. It's been made out of a material. That's the texture of the material. We could choose a different one, but it's not gonna, the printing is fine. And this person was like completely shocked. Like, couldn't handle it. We had to get we actually convinced the printer to give us a new one because we described what they were seeing, and they're like, oh, that shouldn't happen. Mike and I took a look at both of the printings. They were identical. It was the fabric of the print, like the fabric of the paper that he was seeing, and he considered that like low resolution. It wasn't. And also, you don't check things out 1 centimeter from your eyeball. Your eyes don't focus there. They don't focus. Otherwise, your nose would always be in focus.
I love that I had this one on here. I knew it was gonna trigger you for that.
Oh my God. So my advice when working with a design diva is push through, get paid, and be shocked. Because I certainly was. Yeah. And I still am.
To be fair, that was an unsuccessful design diva that we worked with. Fair. I think most of the time, there are some design people that are like, or people, customers that have strong opinions, about design, most of the time you can talk them off the cliff. Like we had people ask us to put music on their website, for example, that like play it full blast. Like most of the time we can argue with them to the point where like, hey, none of your competitors have this. No one has this because it's just extremely disruptive for the clients. They don't like anyway, you can reason with people, right? And that's what this question really is about. You have to reason with them. You have to prove to them that what they're doing is wrong. For instance, if they want like light gray on black for their text, you go into the whole contrast discussion with them. You talk about like how the, 10-15% of the population won't even be able to read this because they have some form of color blindness. I'm pulling those statistics out of my ass, by the way. All statistics are pulled out of my ass. But anyway, so regardless, like you have to go through and actually find statistics that back up your claims. And you might have to have this kind of discussion with them where you just explain to them step by step why they're wrong. And then you might have to make some compromises because they're going to push back and be like, well, I still like this. So you'd be like, okay, well, we can go a little bit lighter gray on black for the text, right? Like you talk them off that ledge. But in Matt's particular case, sometimes you have a design diva you can't talk off the ledge and you just have to do exactly what Matt said. Well, what were the 3 points, Matt?
I think it was push through, get paid, and be shocked.
Get paid. Yep. That's perfect.
I would like to say something. I'm not going to divulge who it is. They do have a new website. About a paragraph on the whole website. I would like to say that. So there's a bit of text now. Moving on here to the overnight success. So a small client's project goes viral, demanding rapid scaling and support. So, Mike, I'd like you to discuss how to manage unexpected... Are you looking at that website, Mike? Yeah, I see you shaking your head. All right. Discuss how to manage... You know exactly what I'm talking about, too. It's still happening. Like, no one has ever been able to talk that design diva off the ledge on their decisions. Period. But anyway, so the overnight success. Small client project goes viral, demanding rapid scaling and support. Discuss how you would like to manage, or how you would manage, the unexpected success and scale up quickly.
Oh, yeah. This one's tough because it's something that I think about quite often when I'm working with clients. And I think about it because of all those horror stories of the, especially the serverless horror stories of the Vercel bills that all of a sudden went up to like $100,000 because of the clicks on the projects and stuff like that. Like it's happening right now. Like there was one couple weeks ago. It was some sort of like Instagram kind of app for creators that circumvented AI, something like that. Anyway, it happened to them. They had like a $70,000 Vercel bill because they were like an overnight success. They had a big viral thing that happened and all the traffic was legitimate. Like they were getting customers to their website. It was working and scaling technically properly, but all of a sudden their bill went through the roof and there's not much they could do about that. So that scares me. So I do think about this. It's a few things that I do. One is I use scalable backends, right? Like, so I do use Vercel because of stuff like this, where like if we need to scale, we can scale overnight. But I also set spend limits, and I set those very, very diligently. Like that's the first thing I do when I spin up a project. I'll set a spend limit, usually something like a couple $100, at which point the website will go down. Now, that's not the greatest thing. Like if someone DDoSs you, they'll actually denial of service your website, right? But at least when that happens, you'll be notified, first of all, with notifications. Second of all, the site will go down and your spend will be stopped. And then at that point, you can spin up some, rate limiting software on top of your stuff, put up a CAPTCHA, stuff like that to stop the DDoS attack or the overnight success. Again, depending on the situation, a lot of times I will talk to the client about this before we even launch. Their intention is to be an overnight success. Like this is a positive for them. But what they don't realize is, hey, it could increase your costs of your database. It could increase your costs of your hosting. And as long as you're upfront with them about that, being like, hey, if you're an overnight success, hopefully you have a way to monetize that. Because if you have a $70,000 Vercel bill, you better be getting, a few $100,000 back for that overnight success, right? Or you have to be able to be funded enough to, bring that on. And this is the balance that you have to do. Now, Again, sometimes you have to make it so that Vercel might not work for this client. If the client relies on the general public, as I like to call it, where it's like anyone could be a customer, right? It's not a niche. It's targeted for the general public. And examples of those are like Uber, Airbnb, Facebook. That's a general public application where your ideal situation is you have millions of hits, right? In those situations, yeah, you probably wouldn't rely on a Vercel or a serverless provider that's going to 10x your bill over top of infrastructure like AWS. On those kinds of projects, because you're thinking about the ideal success when you're planning it, you would build out infrastructure. It's going to cost more. It's going to cost way more to build it out because you're probably going to have to get an AWS expert. You're probably going to have to get a Kubernetes person to be able to build out scaling systems and stuff like that. But if that's the goal, if your goal is millions and millions of hits, you need to think about that from day one, in my opinion. A lot of projects that we work on, that's not the goal. Reality. Like a lot of projects that we're working on, the goal is a niche, right? Like, so, you know, a couple thousand hits is the goal because a lot of those couple thousand, if they hit, they'll convert to actual dollars and cents, right? And that can be a very successful project. And in those situations, again, as long as you prevent DDoS, which I discussed with the spend limit, and as long as you're able to scale quickly, you know, and monetize that scaling, you're good to go with something like Vercel. So you need to choose the tool for the job early on, and then the overnight success becomes a success. You know what I mean? It doesn't become a problem. It becomes the inevitability of your systems that you design.
This is sort of the enemy to no-code tools, where no-code tools often have rate limits for good reason, right? But also rate limits that sometimes are limited, meaning the highest tier is at a limit. And many don't. Many have sort of a, hey, you have to call us and we'll get you an enterprise tier, or we'll get you, you know, a special premium tier. Fair enough. But many will still have a limit of like, hey, we don't grow to this extent and you're kind of done. But like we've mentioned to our clients, and you mentioned recently, Mike, is that there's going to be growing pains. And so, you know, if they're at a point in which they cannot afford or don't want to go to anything but a no-code tool, let's say they want to help build it or something like that, and they want to go to a no-code tool, and they could become an overnight success, I always tell them, hey, if you outgrow this, I mean, that's good news. I mean, just go hire someone else or hire me or whatever. Go hire someone and go get them to build you a new site on something that's like super robust. Because you're at the point where if you're making traffic like that, you're making waves like that. I mean, you're making waves like that, right? Like you're going to be in a different situation than you are now. You're looking at the budgeting and all that through the lens of today. Whereas, you know, tomorrow, if you become a viral success, you're looking at it through a different lens. Where now you have hopefully a lot more money because you've monetized properly. You have a lot more money. You have a lot more things that you can kind of go with. And that will, or you have a lot of resources that you can work with, and that will allow you to sort of move differently. Because here's the thing is like, you can't take into account everything. Like I know, Mike, you know, you laid out a great situation in which you can scale, like with Vercel too. Like if you have the monetization there, like, yeah, your bill on Vercel is going to go up, but your site will remain up. And then maybe, you know, you're at that point where you're like, hey, we're able to still be profitable. We're paying for this big Vercel bill, but I would like to look up a different solution. I don't want to pay this big Vercel bill. Okay, that's a growing pain, right? For other solutions, you know, it sucks. You are going to have downtime. You are going to have to sort of scramble and find some other place to get a website. And for many businesses, the actual website itself is not their business. Their website is they restore cars, they fix whatever, right? Like they build this, they build that in the real world type of thing. They're not actually, you know, a blog that's getting ad revenue. And so they're busy. You know, if their website's blown up that much, they're busy doing other stuff. And that even then buys them time where they're like, I got so many jobs on the go. Let's call somebody up. Before my budget was two grand and we had to use a no-code platform. My budget's now 30 grand. Let's get somebody in here. Let's get them just to do it. Cause like, you know, I don't want to deal with that, but I want the leads to still keep coming in. It's a growing pain. And so there's that sort of angle to it. The thing too is that the overnight success is really like hitting the lottery. And so it's probably I'm not going to get into the statistics of it and whatever. It's very possible, you know, if they're really good at social media and things like that, like there's ways to like sort of bend the odds in their favor, assuredly. But it's still very rare. And so that is something that you do have to think through. Like, you're like, oh, it's the, as an overnight success, like these people are an overnight success. Like, how many of your clients are going to be an overnight success? We've hooked people up with stuff where they've had, a successful business for, close to a decade now on shared hosting, where they're just on shared hosting, they're getting leads, everything's fine, and that's it. Tell you right now, if they go crazy, their traffic goes nuts, they're going to have some downtime. There's going to be migrations, and some of those sites are so old, they might not be able to be migrated that easily. We might have to build new. That is a pain, and that sucks. But the thing is like, they can't become an overnight success without that website that they had originally, right? Like, they went to the scale that they were able to afford at the time, and because they were resilient, they kept going, whatever, their business kept moving, they became an overnight success. So it sucks, whatever. But if there's a high chance, like what Mike is saying, and I assume, Mike, when you say like the Vercel client, like just sort of scalable thing, it's more for people that you expect to become very successful or expect to like very rapidly go up. Like a local car repair shop, you wouldn't be like, yo, we better get you on Vercel, we better get you all ready to scale up, we better get this. Like a Webflow site is probably totally fine. Even without a CMS in a lot of those cases, totally fine. If that person, like if that local car, auto body, whatever shop blows up, they're going to have so many cars in there to repair that it's going to be like, okay, pay somebody 10 grand or like upgrade me to the enterprise Webflow or like whatever. Like, let's just get it going. That's an aside. Like, they're fixing cars. They got stuff to do, right? And so they're looking at it through a different lens, and it's a different situation. But if you expect someone to, hey, we're a startup, and our whole thing is that we want traffic, and that's all we do all day, every day. We market. We want traffic. We go on social. We want everyone to come to our site. It's like, okay, we probably should move them somewhere where they may become viral, and the site's going to become a major thing, especially if the site is the actual revenue generator, the ad revenue, the brand deals, the whatever, guest posting, whatever the heck they do on their site. If that's what's generating the money, then we should probably like insulate it in a way, right? That's how I would deal with it, is like, Mike is actually more prepared for this than me, where he's like, let's go in Vercel, let's get it all scaled, whatever. For me, I'm like, hey, let's save the money now, and then let's just deal with it later. And let's maybe even have a plan, or maybe even not. Like, if we scale to a point, or if we get to a point where like the actual business has scaled so far, I mean, our scaling plan may be too little, right? Like at that point, especially if you've started with something as quote unquote simple as shared hosting, or something as simple as like a really like sort of lower tier Webflow plan where you don't even have a CMS. Like those type of things is sort of like, okay, like we're different now. Like we've outgrown this. And a lot of influencers, I know that Pat Flynn, a number of years ago, I haven't listened to him in quite a while now, but Pat Flynn, Smart Passive Income Podcast, he used to always say, hey, go on and go to, I think it was Bluehost for WordPress and to get your blog started. But then he mentioned, he's like, hey, like I outgrew them. Like I got to a point where like I had to, grow. I had to grow and I had to go somewhere else. And like developers, I assume, because I don't think he did it, developers went in and, set them up with whatever, VPS, dedicated, whatever the heck they did, cloud hosting, blah, blah, blah. They figured it all out and got that done for him. And he's fine with that because he's not making $12 a month from his site anymore. Like he's making, hundreds or thousands or millions or whatever. And it comes to a point when it's like, oh, shoot, my main revenue thing broke. Well, we have all this money that we've made and we want to continue doing that. So we got to throw money at it to get it upgraded, to get it to do it, right? It's just the way of the road. If someone at that car mechanic place, like if they're taking in too many cars, you got to hire more mechanics. You got to get a bigger building, and that's a hassle. It's a growing pain, and so it's just something that you should consider, absolutely prepare for, like Mike said, if you can, if you're aware of it, but also acknowledge that in the initial steps of planning, you don't want to make it so that you start in a place that's not as nice because you're like, okay, part of our budget has to go into potential scaling. It's like, no, let's start where we should. If we're on shared hosting, we're on a really low no-code plan, let's start there. And if things blow up, great. Things are going to break, great. Because you're making a bunch of money now. Because we stuck with it, now we're able to go. You don't want to sort of cut yourself off at the knee in the beginning to say, well, I might go viral, so let's build a site that's like super simple. And that's actually the thing that's holding you back. You don't want to hold yourself back in that way.
Those are really good points, honestly. The fact that you don't want to start yourself off on the wrong foot because of a potential of virality. That's the fear there. And I think that's a communication thing. right? Like if you go to a client and they're like, well, my goal in the first 6 months is to just get, 100 customers, but then like 6 years from now, my goal is, 10 million customers. That's a different discussion, right? Like that's where this is what exactly what you're saying, Matt, comes in. It's like, hey, let's do something simple first. And again, just to clarify with Vercel, that's the one where like it can scale, but it starts off at 0. Like you don't have to pay for it and then it can scale. But the scaling is the thing that's a little bit scary on Vercel, right? Like it can do it, but it's expensive. And then with stuff like shared hosting, that's also really good for like just a proof of concept kind of thing, get something out there. So those are the conversations you have to have initially. If someone comes to you and they're like, hey, we're a $7 million valuation, whatever, we have a thing, we have a marketing budget right away, and we're expecting, 1 million people to use our website in the first 6 months, that's when the discussion comes in of being like, okay, we're building scaling infrastructure from the get-go, right? Those are the kind of 2 pillars that I wanted to kind of clarify here, because if you go too pigeonholed into being like, well, you're expecting to have 6 million in 6 years, and you're all of a sudden need to spend $1 million on infrastructure, you're going to, gatekeep a bunch of people from even creating their thing. And the reality is the success is very, very, very not guaranteed. So it's better to get something out there quickly that can be moved to something that's more scalable than to sit around and try to scale something that doesn't have any customers.
Yeah, and actually, like this is a really specific situation, but it would be a situation like if your client, has 100, 200, maybe 1,000 even traffic right now per month, you're thinking, oh, you could easily do that on shared hosting, but they're like, hey, but we also got a great valuation, like you said, Mike, and we're about to have a big marketing thing, like we're about to end up on Shark Tank or something. It's like, hey, okay, well, once that episode airs and you put our URL out there, like that shared hosting is gonna not do it, so we better like build something in here, right? And better get a little ready, of course. But if it's like someone who, we've helped people where we've doubled their business, and doubling their business means they're getting 45 phone calls a week, and they're super happy with that, and they can barely keep up. It's like they're on shared hosting. They don't need to go to Vercel. They don't need to go anywhere. Shared hosting, $295 a month is what they're on. Boom, done. That's it. And that's perfect for them. That's where they're at. They're not going to build multiple buildings to do it or nothing. And like that's just perfect. All right. Well, honestly, I think we've done it. Like we've covered everything. Don't become a design diva or a ChatGPT guru. Please do not. But do become an overnight success. And, if you want to support the show, we're done. Like, we just did it. Like, I'm literally speechless, and I never am. Remember that we're on Patreon. That's patreon.com/HTML, all the things you want to support episodes like this. And many thanks to our $3 tier patrons. Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com. Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com. Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com. Joshua via silvio.us. And Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se. And remember that we also have a Magic Mind deal, and it is for a limited time. So we have a limited time code that you can use right now that gets you up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off one-time purchases with code HTMLPOD20. No spaces, no hyphens, no nothing. HTMLPOD20. Use that at checkout. Remember to use our link as well. That's magicmind.com/HTMLPOD20. That link and code will be in the show description as well as on HTMLallthethings.com within the show notes. And last but not least, we'd like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, a contributing author on HTMLallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught, the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on, and this outro will sign us off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things Podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media. On Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.